Hello everyone, my name is Rishabh, and today I have with me a person who rarely needs an introduction. She's currently the chairperson of the BracU University Board of Trustees since 2019, a board she has previously been a member of since 2012. She is also the managing director of BracU Enterprises, heading 11 different social enterprises such as Arong, BracU Dairy, and more. Her portfolio knows no bounds. She's none other than Tamara Hasan Abed. She's here with us today to talk about a man whose contributions to our country was recently recognized by receiving the highest civilian honor, the Shadhinata Padak, who is none other than Sir Fazle Hasan Abed. Hello, and thank you for joining us today.
Hello, thank you.
So, if I will just get into the conversations, first of all, congratulations for the award that was bestowed upon Sir Fazle Hasan Abed. And if I could just get into it, BRAC has successfully been operating for 53 years now. So if you could just give an insight on like what were the goals or formulas through which BRAC has reached the peak it is at today.
So I think it's a combination of a few things. I think the first thing is the purpose and mission. And I think that, and that is to alleviate poverty, empower the poor, and to help with nation building. So in that, BRAC has obviously, we have a country with a large population with little land and resources. And at the time BRAC started, the level of development was very low. So there was a lot of need to do many things in many sectors. And I think so BRAC, every time BRAC found that it stumbled across a problem when it started its development work, it went straight in to do something about it. So there was an authenticity of sort of having to deal with all kinds of problems that BRAC felt that it wasn't necessarily somebody else's responsibility. Whenever it could do something, it jumped in. So I think one of the main things is the authenticity of purpose, but also I think the courage and ambition to do things at scale. So as I said, because needs were big and we have a large population,
Right.
so therefore it was important that whatever was being done at a certain scale so that people could really benefit out of it. And when I say, the courage, I mean that, a lot of organizations or a lot of people start to do something and are quite satisfied with doing something well, but it remains sometimes quite small. So BRAC, whenever it tried an activity, piloted a solution, and found that it was effective, it felt the need to take it nationally, because it felt that that then could be rolled out nationally and that could have sort of a large impact in people's lives. If I mention a few other things, I think the other important thing is that BRAC has always operated with high integrity, and that has been both in management and governance. And that has been very important to build a robust and accountable, transparent organization and institutions that BRAC has built over the years. So I think having personal, having organizational interest above any self-interest or personal interest, and sort of building a group of people, staff, employees who sort of live and breathe the core values. That has been very important for the organization. And I think the core values have come, from the founder and come into the organization. And we have sort of an army of dedicated employees who live and breathe BRAC's values. And that has been also very important to build the institution, the honesty and authenticity of its work and its impact. And lastly, I would say, a couple of things. BRAC has always looked for pragmatic and effective solutions and innovative solutions with original thinking. It's never shied away from going against the grain or going against conventional ways of doing things, conventional ideas. It's always looked for solutions, pushed the boundaries, tried to think out of the box to figure out how certain problems in people's lives could be overcome with programs, with enterprises, with other types of institutions. And when you when you have a large organization or large institutions, you need to build systems and processes that work, that can professionally manage these large institutions. So I think it was a combination of many factors. But in the heart of it all was, of course, uh, our founder was an enlightened um, altruist, and he led by example. He always walked the talk, and he believed that um, he believed that everybody had the potential within them, and they just needed a little bit of opportunity um, to be able to get that out of themselves and to be able to build their own lives. And he felt, he was a strong believer in social justice, and he believed that everybody deserved that opportunity, and everybody should be able to avail of that opportunity, and work very hard towards that, towards providing people as many opportunities as possible.
Right. So, Sir Abed founded BracU, and he sustained its growth with his very able leadership. Uh, During his twilight years, how did he address the changing leadership? Like, what were his plans, and how was it all managed? And was there any particular difficulties that was faced by BracU as an organization after his passing? If you could shed some light on that.
Sure. So, Sir Fazle had stepped down from day-to-day management when he turned 65 in 2001. And since then, he chaired a lot of the boards of the important organizations that BracU had founded. But he was really the glue that kind of kept all of these organizations under one umbrella and driven by the same mission. But when he found out, so he had started sort of working on his succession and what would happen after him in terms of how to keep all of these institutions glued together and working for the same purpose. He had started working on it in 2018, but in 2019, middle of 2019, when he found out that he was terminally ill, all of that, the plans got expedited. And he sort of, when he found out that he was terminally ill, he had cancer, he decided not to go for treatment and kind of, get drawn into the, very rigorous treatment of cancer, in which case he wouldn't be able to do anything else, and probably be taken over by chemotherapy and all of that, and radiotherapy. He'd rather opted not to take treatment. So whatever few months that he had to live, that he could actually work effectively on the governance and on setting the course for BracU and on setting the sort of governance of BracU, after him. So he got diagnosed with cancer in London, and he quickly came back to Dhaka, and he started looking at all of the boards and who are the people who would be good to take these boards forward. And one of the main initiatives was to form a global board, so a sort of super board above all of these boards of the various BracU institutions, which would sort of uh, you know, um, carry out the function that he used to carry out, which is being a glue for all of these organizations, which is sort of being a sort of guide and safeguarding the BracU brand, figuring out what are the kinds of activities that BracU should get into or shouldn't get into, sort of so the global board was formed, and it was formed before he passed away, but it was very early days when he passed away. And then it took a little while for things to gel, obviously, and it wasn't very easy with COVID because people couldn't meet face to face. There were a lot of new members on different boards. There was a new global board, but I must say that it is populated by people who really have the right intention, who understand that BracU is an important organization that really has, can leave a lot of impact and has left a lot of impact in people's lives, and is able to do a lot in many sectors. And so there are people, they're literally guardian angels who protect this organization and who've really taken it upon themselves to guide this organization in the right way. So I must say that it really has worked very well, and he would be proud today to see how the organization is going forward.
So, as we all were aware, Sir Fazle Hasan Abed was actually living quite a comfortable life in London, and yet he felt the need to leave all that behind and come work here in Bangladesh for the people of his country. So he came with a set of visions and a set of missions that he wanted to accomplish. It has been about 53 years since that mission started. How much of that do you think has been accomplished, and how much of it do you think still remains? Are the visions, do you think, still untouched, or has there been some changes to it to take BracU forward?
Thank you. So I would say that, when he first started working, he didn't come with any big visions or missions, right? So at the time, the war had just ended in Bangladesh. I think he felt, and probably many young people felt, that they needed to do something, and he felt strongly that he needed to do something. And I think the 1970 cyclone was a real motivator. He speaks in many interviews that he saw bodies lying, strewn all over the field when he went to Monpura, in the water, and it woke him up to the fact that life is so fragile, and especially of people who are poor, because if one cyclone can sort of wipe away communities and families and homes and all of that, that doesn't happen to people who live in buildings who are better off, right? That happens to people because they're poor. And so he felt that, it was a responsibility of those who are privileged, to there's a responsibility to do something for the people who are not, right? For the people who didn't get the chances, for example, that he did. And he came back to the country and started working in Shalla with rehabilitation and all of that. I'm sure you know the story, and many people know the story. So I won't go into that. But I think it was his work working with people that formulated slowly his ideas and his visions of or mission of what he wanted to do, and also in that way, BracU's vision and mission. So it was a sort of, something in the making, I think. But but the thing is, so over time, BracU's vision of a world free from all forms of exploitation, where everyone would have the right to realize their own potential, this is something that I think the idea of social justice and the idea that poverty is not something you're born into because of your fate, but because of systems of oppression and injustice, people become poor, or people remain in poverty. And that is something, I think, that throughout his upbringing, from his childhood and through to his when he started BracU, I think that sense was inculcated in him quite strongly, through various things: his family, his experiences, sort of his own experiences. And so I think over time, sort of he worked on various things, because he was a very capable person who had the broad shoulders to take on many responsibilities, which none of which were thrust upon him, things that he took upon himself and he felt that he could do something about. So I would say he would be and he has spoken about it in different places, that he would be the first to say, I think, that the one thing he felt, the one unfinished agenda of his life, was the equality of men and women. And he felt that women were 50% of us human beings, who have perennially through time, been oppressed and controlled and not had the opportunities that men have had, for example, right? And he felt that women possessed the capacity and the capability to really change society and change families and communities, because women had, the kind of commitment that women had towards their children and their family. Um, it was something that he felt could be catalyzed and could be um, a way of changing society and developing society. He used to, he through his experiences in life, he observed many things. For example, he told me one day, and he's spoken about it as well, in other places, that early on in BracU, when BracU started work, there was a relief program because there was a famine in Bangladesh, and there was a food kitchen type of thing, that an organization had asked BracU to run in Romari in Rangpur. And he observed that, because of hunger, a lot of the men had fled the village, had fled the community to look for food for themselves and their families. But the point is, they had gone in search of food and in search of survival. It's the women who are at home with the children who couldn't really walk away or desert the child. A mother will never be able to walk away from a hungry child in search of her own food. And he sat there and observed that whatever little food the mother, no matter how hungry she was, she fed her child first. you know and I think from there he understood that women uh, manage poverty. So whatever limited resources there are in a household, women learn to manage that and still be able to sort of feed and clothe and do whatever they can, squeeze out whatever they can for the children and the family. If a woman with limited resources, a man might go to a tea stall and spend 5 taka, have tea and have a chat with his friends and come back. But a woman with that 5 taka will probably invest it for food, nutrition, or education or health of the family. Right? So these keen observations while working in rural Bangladesh and while working in development, I think formed his understanding of the fact that women were the ones that would be able to make change in society if you gave women the tools, if you gave women the education, that they would utilize it for the betterment of their families and hence communities. Um, at this this made women the central actors of change in BracU's work. And this also, he felt that, is something that is, as I mentioned earlier, is the unfinished agenda of his life, because he felt that there was just such a long way to go, before women could avail the same opportunities as men.
So, BracU initially started its journey in Bangladesh, and now it's currently one of the largest NGOs in the world. And it's a telling story coming from the global south. So currently, you're present in 11 countries across the globe, and you have taken up initiative for social enterprises and different development projects. So, what sort of challenges did BracU and Sir Abed come across in doing this, uh, in implementing these changes? Like, for example, how welcoming were these communities who were, different from Bangladeshi mindset and culture? And what was it like to incorporate social changes into your mission as well, which was something BracU did not initially start out to do, but it's now one of their most highlighted points. So, what were the challenges for these changes and the challenges that you might have come across?
Mm-hmm. So BracU has, worked in some pretty difficult areas in the world, post-conflict zones, Afghanistan, South Sudan. BracU was in Pakistan. Um, at times it has been difficult, very difficult. BRAC has also had to, shut down operations in certain areas. For example, a few years ago in Pakistan, they asked most of the foreign NGOs to leave, and BRAC had to close its operations. It is difficult in Afghanistan now to do a lot of the development programs that BRAC used to do, the areas that BRAC used to work on. There have been conflicts in South Sudan for which we have not been able to, continue working. So, but one thing is, but it's been more sort of political changes, conflicts, things like that. But if you talk about communities, communities have been very welcoming. Communities have been very welcoming because BRAC works absolutely at the grassroots, and BRAC tries to come up with solutions to people's problems along with them. BRAC listens to people on the ground, right? BRAC designs their solutions along with them. So communities and BRAC usually works on things that are very, very important for the community. And very basic needs of the community. So communities have generally been very welcoming. But we've obviously, as I said, we've had problems in some countries. We've done well in other countries. We now work not only with sort of our own programs. Although one of the main ways in which we work is, of course, delivering programs on the ground ourselves, but we also now have a ultra poor graduation initiative, which is technical assistance to governments who are interested in BRAC's solution for the extreme poor, for the ultra poor. And that is something that is taking hold in different countries in the world. So that's something that BRAC would be willing and ready to technically assist any government who is interested in sort of alleviating poverty through BRAC's graduation approach. So there are many ways in which BRAC is now working in other countries outside of Bangladesh.
So just to gather a personal insight, how different was Sir Abed as a father than when he was busy with work? And if you could also shed some light on what were his, favorite pastimes and as such.
Sure. Not because he's my father, but Sir Fazle had some very special qualities. He knew how to give freedom and independence. And it was the same with us, his children. And it was the same with people at work. If you wanted to do something, he didn't sit on your head. He let you be. He would support you. If you asked for guidance, he would give it to you. But he let people develop in their own way, with their own abilities, and develop their own thinking. So he so he let us, he supported us, but he let us grow into our own people, our own selves. He never lectured. He never told us what to do. We could discuss things with him. You would know if there's something, the decision you took or something he didn't like, you would know about it from his expression, but he would never say, don't do that. Because ultimately we human beings have to learn through our own experiences, and we have to learn through our own mistakes, right? So that's the kind of father he was. He listened to a 3-year-old to a president with the same kind of focus and interest. If he was talking to you today, you would think there was nobody else that was important to him in the whole world but you, right? So he knew how to give whoever it was in front of him, whether it was a village woman, whether it was a little child, whether it was a president or an important person. He had the same kind of interest in you, the same level of respect with which he would listen to what you had to say. And he would really listen because he was curious about other people's opinions, thoughts. He knew he could learn from anyone. So he really was that sort of person, the kind of people we talk about, that you should learn from anyone and everyone, no matter how uh, great he became in terms of his fame and his reputation and his awards and his and people sort of making a big deal about him. He remained exactly the same, you know and he took that same interest, had the same time, had the same humility. um, so these were some of the ways in which um, and a few other things. He was an interesting person. He was interested in so many different things. He knew about so many things. He read voraciously, and not one type of stuff. He read all the old classics. He read books on science, books on management, books on architecture, autobiographies, books on development. So and magazines, newspapers. He read a lot of international newspapers as well, international magazines, just to understand sort of where the world was headed. What is the new technology coming out? What are people thinking about this, that, and the other? you know he knew, and he would engage with people like that. So he would, for example, if he once found out that in New Zealand, I think English teaching or mathematics, I can't remember which one, had sort of like they had the highest, so sort of English teaching was at its best there, right? So he got like educators from there to come and help with Brac's education program. So he would search out for innovations in the world, what was happening where. He would figure out how can we get that over to Bangladesh, how can BRAC or Bangladesh benefit from that, how can our communities benefit from that. So he was an interesting person, and he could talk about a wide range of subjects, and he was an easy person. He was not a very sort of uh, he was serious. He had a lot of gravitas, but he would never make you feel intimidated. So there was a very easy way about him, you know. So it's easy to talk to him. He was also very loving. He was very loving, very affectionate. I lost my mom when I was 7 years old, but I got hugs and kisses from my dad all the time, even in my 40s. He would come and plonk big splooshes on my cheeks, So he was an affectionate father. He was an interested father. Um, and and I think one other thing I want to say as a daughter is that men and women were equal to him. So my brother and I were equal to him. What I could do, my brother could do. Where my brother could go, I could go. And we got the same opportunities. And he really, yeah. So I think all of those things, I would say. I could say a lot more. I could say a lot more. This His personality is like an ocean, you know. There are bits you could see, but there's so much depth that unless you went deeper and deeper, you couldn't really quite understand. It was vast and it was deep as well, you know. Um, and in terms of favorite pastimes, so reading, and more reading. He used to love reading. Music. He loved music. He loved Rabindra Sangit, and he loved Western classical music. Some of his favorite composers were Mozart and Beethoven. So he loved music. He loved watching good films. Um, and of course, news and sports is something he used to watch all the time as well. And he had a lot of quality time for family, you know and he always gave us quality time, no matter how busy he was, what institutions he built, what stress he was under. Whatever time he gave was not distracted. Oh, I'm a busybody, I'm giving you time, I don't have much time, talk to me quickly. None of that. you know when he was with you, he was fully there. He was not distracted. He had the time, and that quality of time was very important. So it didn't matter how much time, because the quality of time was really special.
So, in closing remarks, Are there any words of advice for the students of BracU University? Which values of Sir Abed do you think is important to hold on to for these students to succeed in life while also bringing about meaningful changes?
So I think one of the most important things I would say is to go beyond your self-interest, because not because everyone has to be a Sir Fazle or Sir Abed. Um, you know, people have different interests, but going beyond your self-interest is just a richer and more meaningful life. you know People who live only for themselves and their families, that life is pretty ordinary. Everybody does that, right? And no one remembers you for it, and your life then is of no consequence to anybody else but yourself and maybe your family. But if you go beyond your self-interest and you understand that we are all connected, that in this on this planet we are all connected, and that unless a community is well, unless everybody else is well, you're not really well, you know and and if you can go beyond your own self-interest to engage with the wider world and see what might be your purpose, what might be your role, what might be your little bit to do in that, to take humanity forward, to take your community forward, that is a far richer life, and that life is of consequence to everybody else. That is a life that truly matters. So I would say that. The other two things I would say is continue to pursue knowledge, continue to search, continue to learn, continue to be curious and to find, because the more the more knowledgeable people become, the more truly knowledgeable I would say people become, the more they understand how little they know, and the more humble it makes you, because we humans literally have only scratched the surface of what there is to know about this universe. We know very, very little. So I would say that, like Sir Fazle, and I'll call him Sir Fazle because that is actually the right way of saying it. We in Bangladesh, because he's known as, Abed is, he's popularly known as Abed, so therefore it has become Sir Abed, but the right way of saying it is actually Sir Fazle. So, so I'll say Sir Fazle. But um, I think it's important to continue to search and to continue to listen to differing opinions, um, to never think, because sometimes I feel very often people here feel like they really understand something or they really know something, and they're very stubborn and rigid about it, without really realizing that there's a whole host of things that they are really missing. you know so it's important to hear others, it's important to hear the smallest voices in the room. um, and lastly, I would say never compromise with your ethics and your integrity, because it might put you in problems in the short term, but in the long term, it will always, always serve you if you do the right thing.
So thank you so much, ma'am, for giving us your time today. And we actually got to learn a lot about Sir Fazle and everything that he stood for. So I hope everyone enjoyed that, and we can continue this conversation some other day.